Hey everybody, happy Sunday. Thank you so much for joining us this morning or afternoon, wherever you may be in the world. We have Johan Nordstrom joining us from tradingwalk.com. He is the founder of this website as well as a full-time Forex trader. So, we usually don't talk too much about Forex. So this is going to be good. So we'll have a kind of a take on this market. So thank you for joining us, Johan. Quick disclaimer, as always, we will be going over some different tickers and some different pairs, but that does not mean that these are buy or sell signals. These are ways to show features on the platform, highlight some of the ways that you can utilize TrendSpider. So we just want to make sure everyone knows that this is not any type of webinar just to give you guys buy or sell signals, what to advise on what to buy, what not to buy, nothing like that. So our vision is really one thing. That's to innovate the way charting platforms are created. Our charting platform at the base is a charting platform, but on top of that, there's a lot of other ways that make TrendSpider unique. And that's something that's, really important, because it's something that if you do something the same way for decades, nothing's going to come out of that. So that's kind of what charting platforms have done the last few decades. Everything has kind of stayed the same. Nothing's really innovated too much, and so we want to kind of take that to the next level and kind of create things that have never really been thought of before. So the way that we do that is through a number of features that aim to solve problems such as impatience, bias, inconsistencies, all of these things that make technical analysis, possibly, not necessarily, what's the word? All of these things, technical analysis is great, but if you don't use it the right way, if you use it from your biases, if you look at every chart the same way, meaning that or every chart differently, where you're not drawing the same trend line consistently, all of these things make your analysis over time kind of meaningless because you're not following the same set of rules. So that's what TrendSpider is really here to do, is give you you create your plan, and then you stick to that plan through drawing your trend lines, to drawing your fibs, to creating your own conditional alerts. All of these things are there to kind of put you in place to follow a plan, follow a strategy, and remove the emotion. So we do that through these main functions. There's a ton of different things you can do with the platform, and we'll be kind of touching on all of these today. But really, we've got the ability to automate technical analysis anywhere from trend lines to fib levels, overlaying multiple time frames. So for example, if you want to look at the daily price action, but you want to see how that's interacting with the weekly Bollinger Bands, you can do that without necessarily having to switch the chart, split charts. You can do it on all a single screen. So we will be touching on that, but there's a ton of other things that we will be touching on, such as the backtesting engine. This is something that's very new as far as the new feature that we came out with. The backtesting engine itself has been around for about 6 months, but we did just introduce a brand new feature, which is pretty cool, I have to admit, and we'll go through that once Johan is done. So that's just a little bit about TrendSpider, a quick introduction, and I'm excited to hand it off to Johan because, as I mentioned, we really don't do too much at all with Forex. So this will be nice to kind of get that side of the story. And Johan, I will hand it off to you, and I will disable my screen sharing. Thank you so much for joining us.
Perfect. Thank you, Jake. So can you see my screen, guys?
Yes, I can see it. Perfect.
All right, perfect. So basically, I think we'll start with my methodology, and basically what I always look for when I trade is first trading in the direction of the trend. And second, I always want to take my entries at good levels. And basically, when I see price at these levels, I want to get a buy signal. And there are many ways you can many different ways you can use buy signals. Just using simple candlestick patterns like the ones you have in TrendSpider are great. And like I will show you here, using TrendSpider's trend and levels here, basically it makes this very easy. So looking at the EURUSD daily chart here, we have some trend lines, and basically the way I found those trend lines was applying the trends. And it's loading now, so it will show up soon. And the way I look at trend lines is basically finding connecting bottoms at major tops and bottoms, and then just double clicking on these to make them visible when I remove this. So this is a way of getting all different trend lines. And you see where many trend lines connect, you get this kind of confluence, and that also gives you a strong horizontal support and resistance line. So I like looking at these lines just for support and resistance as well. And like I said, I always look for trend and levels. So when I basically have trend lines now, so I know we're bouncing inside this channel here, and we broken this resistance when we were below it, it's resistance, and when we break it and come back to it again, it's support. And the way I like to trade is basically to minimize risk and maximize my reward by basically taking low risk trades and looking for high risk reward ratio. Is I move down to a lower time frame to find my entries. That way I can basically have my stop losses at a logical area where we have support. So if we move down to, say, 1 hour chart and look at this, and we can actually apply the heat map to get an idea where we have strong support and resistance. So from the daily chart, we have the idea that we're in a bullish trend at the moment, because we've broken resistance and we're now at resistance becomes support. And on the 1 hour chart here, we can see that we're right at this heat level. So basically, looking at candlestick patterns here, when we're at this heat map and basically waiting for a candlestick pattern and then enter on the next candle, you can get a very good risk reward trade, basically just placing your stop loss below the candlestick pattern and waiting for price to come up to the next level. Or if you want to take bigger trades, you can have a trading stop loss and just follow the price action. So basically that's my current view on EURUSD. But if we open up lower here, I will look at this and say, well, if we come up to this resistance level, if we gap down here and we come up, this will look at resistance, and we have support down here. So actually, if we maybe gap down quite long, we might get a good buying opportunity here. So I always follow price action, and using the trend lines and the heat maps on lower time frames is a very, very good strategy. So I think most of you follow some cryptos as well. So just looking at Bitcoin here, and if we start on the daily chart and we look at these trend lines here, which I found using TrendSpider's automated trend lines. So basically we had two connecting tops, which created this down sloping trend line, and connecting bottoms here, creating this trend line. And this trend line here is also important. So basically now we're in this area here, and we have very strong bullish candlestick, and we've broken this sloping down resistance line, and now I want to find buy opportunities. And basically you never want to buy high, you always want to find a pullback to where you can basically get a good entry. So always low risk by finding a good entry in a pullback. So if we look on the 1 hour chart here, so we know on the daily chart that we've broken resistance and we retrace down to this trend line. And basically here we have a low and a high. And you see here that this high is broken here. So that's the first indication that we're now in an uptrend on the 1 hour chart as well. So basically just on the next candle, you get a retrace down here, and this would have been a good buying opportunity on the next candle here, which looks like a hammer or a spinning bottom, if that's depending on how you name candlestick patterns. But basically a good buying opportunity here right now live. So, and if we look at the heat maps as well, you can see you have a lot of heat here. So strong support down here if we retrace some more. But as long as you follow price action and take low risk trades using these tools, I think you'll do very, very good. So looking at some more Forex charts, we can look at GBP USD, and here as well we see strong bullish price action. We broken this high right here, and we have a higher low right here. So when we have two connecting bottoms, we can create a bullish trend line, and we see that from these two connecting tops and levels are always like zones. So this is also a top, so this is broken, so this looks very, very bullish now. And basically what you want to do when you have a bullish scenario is you want to look for retracements and then find a good buy signal. So this still looks quite high here. I would like a retracement down to maybe this level here, so a little lower here, or this top here, that resistance becomes support. And you see that if we retrace down to this top, this trend line will also meet that level. So what you basically want to do then is move down to a lower time frame, and you want to find a good candlestick pattern at a heat level like this. So both Euro USD and GBP USD looks quite bullish now. USD JPY, we have this high here, which we're at right now, and we have downward sloping trend lines here and upward sloping here. So this looks like it's consolidating still. We're right at this high, so I wouldn't classify this as bullish as Euro USD and GBP USD. So this is not as good buy scenario as Euro USD and GBP USD. But basically, if we get a retrace down to this support trend line, you want to look for buying opportunities. And if we eventually come up to these resistance lines, you want to look for sell signals. And if we break these resistance levels, you want to look for buy signals when we retrace down to them again. And if we break this support trend line, you want to look for sell signals at retracements. So it's always adapting to the chart and always finding low risk entries. So I don't know, should we take some questions, Jake? Or you want me to look at some other charts?
Sure, we can take some questions if anyone has any. We can look at a couple other charts if there are no questions yet. Looks like a couple are coming in now. James is typing something. But yeah, no, this is great. I just can't believe how much Bitcoin ripped over the last couple days. I'm assuming that was the China news about their digital currency, possibly laws or something. So yeah, it's interesting how, you know, technical analysis can be driven by charts, obviously, but technical analysis really goes hand in hand with fundamentals. So, you know, we were kind of in this falling wedge that you had drawn here on the daily, and it was you know, it was kind of setting up for a nice bounce, and then, you know, you just had this news come out to confirm that. So this was a good example of, you know, TA and fundamentals kind of working together to get a huge move, especially on Bitcoin the last couple of days. James has a question for you, Johan. How do you calculate risk to determine low risk?
Well, basically, I look at, if we move down to 1 hour here on Bitcoin, for example, and we see that we're at the support trend line that was in this pennant, and I got this strong bullish price action. And I then look at where's my support and where's my first profit level. So basically, if I see that I don't have a good risk reward, so basically that the distance to my first take profit is bigger than the support area where I can place my stop loss, then I will not take my trade. I always want bigger rewards. And if I don't have that, basically I don't take the trade. So you see, this was very good because we had the trend line here and basically a strong bullish candle. So you could enter this and basically place your stop loss just below it, because we also have this heat level. And you know that there was a strong and good basically technical analysis base that we would come up to this resistance, downward sloping trend line. And depending on how you trade your stop loss, you could actually be in this trade as it broke as well. So this is a good example of a good risk reward trade where we had a big distance to our take profit and a small distance to our stop loss.
Good stuff. What is Dan saying here? Yep. No, definitely. It's nice to you know, to have the charts to kind of define your risk and kind of see visually where that risk kind of ends, where it starts, on that type of thing. So, any other questions before we either take a look at a couple other charts, or I can take over, and I'm gonna actually go over just a Bitcoin chart posted yesterday, kind of showing the stair step. Johan, if you don't mind, I'll share my screen for a second just to show to kind of add on to this Bitcoin chart that you had. Let's see, BTC USD. And this was really interesting to see yesterday. We had a very classic kind of stair stepper here. This is the daily chart. Let's go down to the 30-minute. It's taking a second to load. Yeah, so you guys can kind of see we were stair stepping the last few days, right? Here's our first step. You can see the volume coming in, supporting these moves up. And notice how long this step is taken, right? You can't just stair step up forever, and especially when this stair step started at 7,400 and ended at 10,400. So, it's not like this can just keep stair stepping up, but it is interesting to see that there is support kind of forming here. There's a base forming. You can also see, look at all of these big blocks of volume, and then you can kind of see where they're holding. They're all holding up here. So there's a lot of support here because look at all of these people that bought Bitcoin. That's kind of holding it. Now, also, though, you can see this big block of volume here on the 30-minute. Anybody who bought on this volume bar, this big spike here, is in the profit. So that's something that you do have to consider as well is, all of these people that bought down here, which was quite a big uptick in volume, everyone's in profit. So that makes it easier for this to drop because there are a lot of people in profit down below. However, since there was another big uptick in volume here, right around, the 95 to 10,000 area, that should probably mitigate this from dropping back down to this area because you have now all of these people holding from this big volume spike here. So you can see this volume spike correlates with this price action here, and then that's why kind of we're forming a base right here. Just that's where everybody bought. So that's just something I wanted to point out on the shorter term time frame, and then on the weekly as well. Just kind of moving averages. They're pretty incredible, especially the EMA 50 on Bitcoin. Now every stock, every Forex pair or cryptocurrency is going to kind of respond to a different moving average. Every stock kind of has its own personality when it comes to this kind of thing. But you can see here on the weekly for Bitcoin, we had hard resistance, broke down, hard resistance, broke out, and this was all in the EMA 50. Broke out, pulled back right down to the EMA 50. We did have a drawdown here of about 9 to 10%. So this was a big fake out here, and that's just kind of a classic case of Bitcoin where the market's just not that liquid, especially when it was dropping. Everyone's kind of like, oh, Bitcoin, yeah, no, I'm done. And then all of a sudden they rip it to the upside. So that was just a classic kind of case of sometimes if you're going to follow something, whether that's conditional criteria like the MACD crossing up, you always have to take into account your drawdown, because the drawdown, you could have a great condition that you're following, the MACD crossing up, the RSI doing this, the vortex indicator doing that. But then if you don't have an idea of what you have to go through first, i.e., oh, yeah, this is a great signal, buy at the EMA 50 on the weekly, but there is the possibility of a 10% drawdown. That's important when you're looking at the price action, because, if you would have stopped out at 5%, you would have left, 20+% on the table here on this bounce once it recovered. So that's always something to consider as well. If you're ever doing, signals, or if you create your own signal, you always have to look at drawdown, because that's something that, it doesn't always get taken into account. And that's the biggest thing is, the drawdown may stop you out and then the trade's over. So just wanted to mention that. And you can always use the back tester to do that. So if, let's say you want to look for a simple entry like a MACD cross, let's just do MACD crosses to the upside. So we'll just do condition, indicator, MACD fast, crossed up through the MACD slow. And, what does that return after 20 candles? We can go and test that. And we can quickly see that in this case, the mean trade return is 10.15%. So that's something that's very interesting. But you always have to take into account that drawdown. There may be a drawdown before that. So if you want to get all of that information, like what's the drawdown, you can go down to download CSV and you can get all that information. So this is something that's kind of interesting as well. So, we've got the back test here. This is the daily chart. We just back tested the daily MACD cross. And so what you can see here is something interesting, right? And this is actually really cool. You can see this was our MACD cross right here. And that's why it says entry right here. And you can see, this was our cross, but look at the drawdown that you had to go through first. You had your entry here, and then you drew down over 8% before moving to the upside. And, this is where technical analysis comes in, because you can say, okay, well, as long as it doesn't draw down or break down below this support line, the trade still may be in effect. Now, what's really cool about this is the strategy tester cloud that we have here. So what this is taking into account, what we just did here was we tested the MACD cross and we tested it on the chart. So you can see here, this is some stuff that I created before, so let's just get rid of this. But what's really interesting about this is you can see where the cross or the back test started. So in this case, you can see it started on December 29th, around there, end of 2018. And then you can see every entry that occurred. And so what this cloud is doing is it's taking into account these 9 positions that occurred. And then it's taking all of those statistics, and it's I don't want to say it's forecasting, but it's actually painting these statistics on the chart. So in this case, if we remove this line right here, this is the average move on a MACD cross. So you can see that we're trading a little higher than the average move after X days. So notice we just did a back test on 20 candles. So once 20 candles has completed, so this was our entry, there will be no cloud because there's no open position anymore. The reason this cloud pops up is because there's still, there hasn't been 20 days that have passed. So this is still technically an open position. And so we have a way to kind of show that average over the 20 days. And so you can see, in this case, we were trading first, we entered, we traded below the 25th percentile. And then once we broke to the upside, we were actually trading at the 75th percentile. So, you can see relative to other moves, how your current move is doing. This cloud, this outline here is the biggest move that ever happened over these 9 positions. So you can see relatively, this recent MACD cross is doing better than the average, but it's still not doing as well as the biggest move that ever happened over these 9 positions. So you can see relative, what's kind of going on here. And you can say, okay, well, this is trading right near the mean. This is trading near the biggest move ever. And so you can really get a lot of information from this Price Explorer Cloud. If anybody has any questions about the Price Explorer Cloud, please feel free to type something into the chat. But it's something that, is kind of how weather forecasters model stuff, right? They take a bunch of variables, they then model it and test it out, and then they kind of, will show, where's the hurricane relative to, past moves. When the hurricane was in this position 50 years ago, how have all of those hurricanes played out? Same type of deal here. You're just kind of getting a cone of possibilities, if you will. And it's not really giving you probabilities. It's just simply giving you, this was the max gain, this was the biggest move down, this is your average. And so it's something that's really cool. Johan, have you used this at all? It's something that's really cool. I know you're not do you use too many lower indicators, or are you mostly the upper side of the chart?
I'm mainly focused on the price action, but I've played around with the strategy tester, and it's a fantastic tool.
Awesome. Well, thank you. So you do more price action. So let's say that you were a price action trader rather than kind of looking at the MACD or any of these lower indicators or oscillators. You could easily back test, simply just the price action breaking through, right? So you could just say, condition, price. Well, in this case, it's the Raindrop. So let's go to a generic open, high, low, close. Let's say the daily close is greater than, whatever. You can actually back test price action as well. And in the future, you'll be able to actually back test, let's say, a trend line or something like that, where it's like, all right, what's the average return once the price touches this trend line? That's something that a lot of people use, and trend lines are just as important as any lower indicator. So that's something that we do feel is something that could add some more value. So we went over Bitcoin, went over kind of a little bit how these things work as far as kind of like a stair stepper for looking at a shorter term time frame, and how the price action is just kind of stair stepping up. But I do want to talk a little bit about the broad markets, just because Forex and SPY don't really go hand in hand, but there are things that happen in the broad markets, or there's things that happen in kind of the macro picture that affect the broad markets and Forex simultaneously. So that's something that's that's always interesting to look at. Is okay, something fundamental just changed, or something just happened in the world where not only did the currency markets get affected, but the stock market was as too. So it doesn't always happen like that. There's a lot of outside forces that move Forex that don't move the actual market. So that's something that's interesting as well. They're kind of two separate beasts. But quickly, I'm just going to look at SPY here. And Johan, if you have any other charts that you want to go over, please let me know, and we'll check out a couple of yours as well. But just one thing I wanted to mention with the raindrops, and raindrops are something that we didn't really go over yet. So for those that are not familiar with raindrops, essentially a raindrop is a volume-based candle. So instead of like a bar chart where you've got, this would be your open, this would be your close, this would be your range for the day, this is actually the volume weighted average price for the first half of the period. And then this is the volume weighted average price for the second half of the period. So it's like a volume based candle. So it's taking into account more of the price action versus volume rather than just looking at the open and the close. So this gives us a lot of information about the volume flow. What's the real move? You may have a hollow candle, meaning a green candle, but then you may have a red raindrop. So there's all different types of ways you can use these. One thing to start with is just getting the basics of kind of the colors. The green raindrop is whenever you've got the VWAP for the second half of the period is higher than the first. So you can see that here. The blue raindrop, or the blue doji, is when both of these VWAPs are equal to each other. So it's pretty much like a true volume doji. And then you've got your volume weighted average price for the second half of the period lower than the first half when you've got a red raindrop. So notice here how you can see, especially in this red candle, what I didn't mention yet is you've got this bar here, you got this bar here, but on each side you've got the volume profile. So you can see during the first half of the period, all of the volume was focused at the top of the day's range, if this is a daily candle. And then into the second half of the day, you can see that volume came in on the downside of price action, meaning sellers were coming in, pushing the price down to new lows. And we know that sellers came in and this volume pushed price to new lows because there's no volume profile on the left-hand side. So we can see the sellers kind of throughout the period here, kind of flowing from the top of the range to the bottom of the range, showing that selling is definitely taking over. So that's something that I wanted to point out before jumping too deep into raindrops. But there's a lot of cool case studies with raindrops this weekend, or this last week of trading. And the first one is QQQ. This is like probably the most textbook example that we could show here, right? So we've got a really strong breakout on the Qs. And what you can see here is we've been testing this area of resistance multiple times, right? So I've got 2 circles here, but we even tested it again here pretty strongly a couple times. And then we finally broke out on Friday. And so what you can see here is you can see that within that volume, you can see that all of the volume for this day on, this was Friday's price action, all of that volume is focused near the top of the range. So you can see it's almost like a balloon, right? It's kind of like a balloon taking off. You've got all of your demand really focused at the top of the price action, kind of like if you start a hot air balloon, all of that hot air rises and kind of forms at the top of the balloon, which makes it go up. And that's kind of what we're seeing here. We've got a lot of that buying action above the trend line, and you can see buyers were definitely in control here. Same thing with IWM. You had a crucial breakout here. We had kind of this triple resistance, if you will, and then we finally broke through it with this balloon-looking type breakout. And what you can see here is the same thing. A lot of that volume is aggregating above the resistance line. So you can see there's a lot of conviction by the buyers here. Excuse me. You can see that the conviction is definitely above this line, and this may be a sign of a bigger move up. Now, if you compare this to, let's say, XBI, this is an example of the opposite, right? So we had a breakout on XBI last week. And notice how there was really no volume at all here. All of the volume was focused below this trend line, and we had a pullback, right? So this first day, there was no conviction by the buyers above this line. Then we've got 2 more days of red. But then notice here, we've got a breakout. We've got a bunch of this volume focused above the trend line. So is this going to be like our real move here? And actually show that buyers were in control. There was conviction behind these pushes to the upside. So this is a way that you can use these raindrops to see volume flow around these resistance or support areas and get an idea of if there is conviction by the buyers or sellers, depending on if you're looking at resistance or support. So that's something that I did want to point out just to showcase a couple cool case studies this weekend. But I will hand it back over to Johan if he has any last charts that he wants to show. And if not, we'll wrap it up and kind of go over the last few things with the webinar. Dan, one question.
Yeah, so just to answer the question, if you don't know if it will work or not. That's why we use, like James asked, calculate risk. Basically, always take low risk trades where you have a big reward and a low risk. So when support and resistance don't hold or don't work, you lose small. But when it holds, you make a lot. So that's my answer to the question.
Yeah. To add to that, support resistance, the more interaction on that line, right? So in this case, we've got Bitcoin again, daily chart. We've got one, can kind of do this by hand. We've got a ton of different times that the price action is testing this support line. So as the price respects this area more, this trend line becomes more significant. And so you'll see here, as I'm circling all these times the price responded to it, there's a lot of different points of interest here on this line showing that, this is going to be a hard line to break to the downside, because every time that the price came back to this area, demand came back in and the price ripped to the upside. So you don't ever know if something's going to work. But if you've got a very strong support or resistance line with a lot of different areas of interest on it, i.e. a lot of different times that the price actually came and tested this area, that makes it a stronger line. So in this case, we had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 instances. my dogs are howling. We've got a few different instances here where, you know, you break through the line and then you kind of even come back to test it, right? So I think your previous shorter term time frame chart here showed that. You know, you can kind of see, let's see if we pull up MTFA, go to the daily trend line, pull up trends here. So yeah, 1 second, not the exponential. So you can see these are actually the daily trend lines here. And so you can see once we did break through here, how we kind of pulled back right to this daily trend line here. So this is a cool example of showing how the shorter term price action then comes back to respect these longer term areas of support and resistance. So that's something that I wanted to show, and it's really cool to be able to overlay these longer term lines onto a shorter term chart to kind of see what's going on. So that's something that's really cool with the MTFA. I think all of the questions are answered as well. So we will go to the roadmap here and go over a couple things that we have coming, right? So we've got a ton of different things that are already on the platform, but that doesn't mean that we're just stopping and, you know, we're done innovating, right? So there's a ton of things coming. In this particular quarter coming up that we're in right now, we have market scanning coming, so you'll actually be able to scan for a list of conditions. So let's say that you want to look for the MACD cross and a blue raindrop. You'll actually be able to go in, type that in, and the system will find any stock that's got those conditions in it. So it really eliminates the manual process of you going through and looking for these different things in each chart. The system will just tell you, yep, these are the 10 stocks that have these conditions, and you know exactly what to look at right away. So that's something that's going to make the whole process even more efficient, and we're really excited to get that in. We've got a lot of requests for it. We will be expanding the price alert functionality, such as the ability to, and I'm not sure if this will be this quarter, but the ability to add multiple time frames in a back test or something like that. So you can say, you know, alert me when the daily price crosses the weekly EMA 50, or back test that when the daily price crosses the weekly EMA 50. So those are things coming in this current quarter. And into next year, we're really going to be focusing on data integration, broker integration. So you'll be able to actually trade through TrendSpider. And we're really excited about that because that will really make us an all-in-one platform all the way from starting your chart to actually executing the trade. All righty, everybody. That ends today's session. Thank you so much for joining this morning. This was our earliest webinar so far, or at least for me. I'm in Denver, so it's 8 o'clock in the morning. But I know some people are in different parts of the world, so this may not be morning time for you. So regardless of where you are, thank you for joining. And it says that Johan may have lost internet connection or something, so I'm not sure if he's still on the call. But a huge, huge thank you to Johan for coming on and telling us about how he trades, a few different ways that he looks at the charts, especially using TrendSpider. And if you want to check out his website or follow some of his trades, you can go to tradingwalk.com. And if you are interested in trying out TrendSpider, you can use the coupon code TWLK15 for 15% off up to 12 months of subscription costs. So definitely something to check out. You don't have to pay right away. There is a free trial. So if you want to try out TrendSpider before you buy, that's kind of how we have it set up now. We want to make sure that you like the platform before going in and just spending money. So again, thank you everybody for joining. Thank you, Johan, for joining us this Sunday. As I mentioned, I think he lost internet connection. That's what it says on my end, at least. And we will talk to you guys next weekend with another webinar to come. Everyone have a fantastic Sunday. I guess I was going to say weekend, but the weekend's almost over. And we will talk to everyone soon. Have a great day.